Hey, ¿qué onda? ¿Cómo están todos? Estamos aquí con Hozier. How are you, man?
I'm good, gracias. Thank you for talking to me.
Oh, thank you for coming to Mexico.
Pleasure.
Bueno, first question. How do you feel that your album, your new album, well, maybe not that new, but new, your album, A Real Leonard, is now in the world? Everyone is experiencing it, everyone is feeling things with it. How do you feel this as an artist?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel I'm really happy that people have enjoyed it. You know, it always feels like you're kind of like lifting a weight off yourself when you release music, and
Okay.
I think it creates space in your head and in your self to kind of create new work. So I'm excited to kind of do that now. You know, I'm also, you know, over the next few weeks, over the next month, and over the rest of the year, I made so much work for that album. I'm probably going to release some songs that haven't been released yet. So
Oh, okay, that's pretty interesting.
yeah,
Like in a deluxe version, or just like a separated
there's
pack?
some separate packs. Yeah,
Okay.
so even just digital. I don't know about a deluxe, but even just let people hear them. You know, there was songs that were other choices for some of the themes in that album. So it's like, yeah, like let people hear them.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because like I feel your project is like very, it's like a flow, like a soul, you know, like it flows through people in different ways. And for example, for me, there are 3 songs specifically that flowed with me like in a very distinctive way that I loved. First of all, If You're Young, that's such a great song. It's one of the most heard.
Right.
What do you feel about that song?
Thank you. That was one of my favorites, I think, on the record.
Okay, so
You know, I enjoy it. Yeah,
I enjoy it too.
I think I hadn't written a song from that perspective, and I hadn't maybe put those ideas to words. I wanted to write something with that theme for a long time,
Right.
even before I had the idea of the album. So I was glad to do it.
Okay, now, what's another song that you like felt you explored that topic that was like maybe not so discovered in your head or in your world?
Yeah, I definitely hadn't like touched on themes of there's moments that deal with the legacy of like colonial I guess the colonial sort of aftermath, or like the colonial
Okay.
legacy. So the destruction of a language. So there's a song called Butchered Tongue, which deals with, I suppose, largely like the destruction of an indigenous language. So that's you know is a theme I'd never played with in a previous song, you know, previous work.
That's such a like I really hadn't catch it in that way. I was like relating the songs to like things for myself. Like I told you, like every song of yours touches souls differently.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen like that perspective, and that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very personally written song. Again, it's like references, like again, a kind of a my own experience of just traveling. Like there's a line in it, just like as a young man, blessed to pass so many road signs. Like I was traveling through different areas of America that are named, you know, whose names are of a language that no one in that area is speaking. So it's just trying to make sense of that and trying to you know. So yeah, a lot of it was quite personal to me and my own just reflection on some of that, you know.
That's great. The other one was All Things End.
Oh, All Things
I
End.
love that song. Like the screams at the end are such a powerful part, you know.
Right. Yeah, there's All Things End. There's one of my favorites is Who We Are as well too. There's like where there's like these, you know, a lot of kind of vocalizations towards the end of that song. But yeah, you know, I think it was just playing with different themes of like definitely in Who We Are, of like accepting very very hard truths about yourself and about the relationships that you find yourselves in, you know. But yeah, you know, thank you. I really enjoyed writing those songs.
Yeah, and I love them. I love hearing them, you know. I want to touch a very specific topic. Actually, it's like 2 combined in one that I felt in your album. There's 2 specific emotions that you touch in very different ways, like in a very strong palette of like in different sounds, in different approaches, and those are love, like that's in every of your albums. But I felt that there was also a combination of like grief in the album, but in a very very strong way that I wanted to like just when I started to listen to the album I was like, oh, this is grief. But no, you like demonstrated that there's like different colors of grief.
Yeah, for sure. I guess one way of looking at it is, I think, and this is maybe getting into it a little bit too deep, but like, I don't think that you can experience love. I think it's like there's one on the same coin. The other side of love is grief. You know, it's the same. So you can't have one without the other. You know, I think to love something, like I think the cost of getting to love something and experiencing love oftentimes is grief. And that can be at the same time, and that can be afterwards. But I don't think you can, in the same way that like you could say joy is the absence of sorrow. It's one.
That phrase was very strong. Like joy is the absence of sorrow.
Sorrow, yeah. So one is, even though it's not there, it's still there. It's still present. You know, or it still it still can be present. There's this great writer called Khalil Gibran, and he's in a book called The Prophet. He talks about like how a violin, the same violin that resonates with beautiful music, is one that has been hollowed out with knives. So you can't, you know, and as joy sits in at your bedside with you, sorrow is asleep next to you. You know what I mean? So it's like you never have one without the other. So I think part of me, there's grief, love and grief can coexist together at the same time.
Okay, and I love that concept because I think it makes every listener like discover what like the color they relate to of that combination. And I experienced that, which was like eye-opening, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And I wanted to touch that topic because it's very interesting. I don't know, like your perspective of doing that is very cool, and also the execution of it, which is a combination, or what I detected, it's a combination of poetry, of literature. What's your connection of with poetry and literature, at least in this album?
Yeah, I'm always fascinated with like poetry. I'm always fascinated with certain, like, you know, like Seamus Heaney's always been a big influence. Samuel Beckett's, like a lot of Irish writers. I mean, Joyce was a huge influence for me, especially in that first record. A lot of that work, and I think with anything, like with any form of art or any form of literature, it's the same thing in that you discover parts of yourself when you interact with art. Sometimes you can find parts of yourself that you didn't know were there, you know, and that can be the same case of like, in like, so it's me also exploring that, and like at the same time you can experience love. You can love something, but you're gonna experience terror at the same time. If you're in love with somebody, you deal with the terror of losing them. You deal with the terror of something happening to them, you know. So, but for me, like Dante's Inferno was a poem I was reading at the start of the pandemic. It's about a person who's like has to walk through hell and come out the other side. A lot of that imagery, a lot of the visuals in that resonated with me at a time during the pandemic, you know. But a lot of old poetry, a lot of classic stories that still today make sense, timeless, thousands of years later, and they still, the same things that people loved, were terrified of, that caused them grief, are the same stuff that we find today, and that's inspiring to me.
Yeah, that's actually pretty inspiring, and you explaining to me makes it like even more clear, you know. Now, there's a very important thing, like in literature, in every art, that is the setting. The setting is like the strongest part of a book or something, just like you said, Dante's. I always have felt that every of your projects have a setting. For example, the first one is like a romantic painting. The second one is like a blue, very ethereal place. Even though it's like weird, I feel it like setting.
Yeah.
But I think this third album is like the one that I haven't like put in a place.
Right.
How would you describe that place?
Yeah. It's a hard one to explain, but the very first song on the album, De Selby Part 1, kind of is like, I don't know if it's like an incantation, but it's like describing... De Selby is a character in another Irish book called The Third Policeman. He's this sort of lunatic philosopher. But if you can imagine, that song is like internalizing the idea that if you sit in darkness, you sit in a dark space, you can imagine, if I can't see my hand in front of my face, if I can't see where I begin and end, where somebody else begins and end, that I'm trying to internalize in a real sense that I actually no longer begin and end. I'm part of that darkness, I'm part of all of that. So in the same way that, and then this is where it ties into Dante's Inferno, it's a story of somebody going through a dark space, walking through a dark space. De Selby to me is kind of like, could be read as like, you're entering into an internal. There's a lyric in the first song which is only the inner upheld. So you sit unseen with only the inner upheld, because there's no I can't see my outside. I can't see anything about the world if I sit in darkness. But what I can sense is only what is within me. That's the only thing I can be sure of if I cannot no longer see or hear anything else around me. I can be sure of only what's inside. So to me, the setting of the album is it's a kind of an internal setting. It's a thing that takes place in the internal consideration, the internal imagination, the internal emotional, the internal world, the emotional internal world, I guess, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
It's very weird, but I love it. Yeah. It's actually like pretty on the line of what I said. Like, I don't know where to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like a world you create yourself.
Yeah. And I think in a sense we are all. I don't know how far we want to get with this, but like in a sense we're all.
How far you want.
How far we want to go. In a way, we're all just creating. That's something that like scientists will tell you, quantum physicists will tell you, and like neuroscientists will tell you, is that we're all just creating the world around us in our brains. That we all agree that we exist, but like everything that we're interpreting, how we interpret it, make sense of it, process it, we're all creating the world, internally in some sense.
Okay, and then the cover art was purposely like someone being part of the earth?
I guess so. Part of it was a nod to in the poem, Dante is like walking through hell, and he's talking to every canto, every circle is him just talking to different spirits, different souls trapped in hell. Some of them are in love, some of them are sorry, some of them are angry, some of them are bitter, some of them are in deep, deep pain, but they're all these just disembodied voices I suppose they're in a dark space. So for me, just to put a mouth surrounded by darkness also is kind of nods to this idea that like all the songs are also just voices in a dark space expressing themselves, which is kind of what happens in the poem.
I just exploded. It's like what I said earlier, like there's a lot of explanation, but at the same time I have my own explanation of it, and it's like crazy. But yeah, for the last questions, how do you feel today? How is Mexico treating you? How is the climate? How you feel in general?
I feel good, I feel like this is some of the best weather I've experienced in a long, long time. Like just to wake up in Mexico felt really, really good today, and I'm playing a show tomorrow night and the night after. One of the best audiences I've ever played to was in this city, and I'm excited to be back. I feel lucky to be back and get to do it again, It's the first show of the year for me, so this is the first show in like a while, so I'm excited, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, man,
Dude,
for
stuff.
giving me the time.
Thank you, you too.
Gracias a todos, nos vemos mañana pues para ver a Hozier, ¿qué más? Adiós.
Gracias.
Great.
Thank you, dude.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It
Yeah,
was a
good
great
chat.
interview.
Yeah, no, really enjoyed it.